and welcome to the Sentient Media podcast, where we meet the people who are changing the way we think about and interact with the world around us. And today we have an award-winning podcast creator in our midst. It's Monique Koch, host of the Brown Vegan podcast. So Monique started her vegan journey in 2010 as a way to protest animal and human exploitation, preserve the planet, and improve her health. So a whole bunch of different reasons. And I've heard her say her purpose in life is to help people learn about the benefits of vegan life and to give them recipes and tips and encouragement to start their own journeys. And for those of you who don't know her work or haven't listened to her podcast, obviously I'll share this in the show notes, but you only need to listen to like probably half an episode or just a few minutes and you'll see how Monique just emanates such a wonderful, non-judgmental support and just comes across as such a kind and inspirational person. So Monique, it is such a pleasure to have you here today. Thank you so much for joining us.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me.
Obviously, I've looked a lot at your work and all of the things that you have been doing. There's a lot that you've been doing over the last, over 12 years now, right? But you're an advocate for this idea of progression over perfection. And
Yes.
I was wondering if you could kind of delve into what you mean by that and why that approach is so important to you.
Yes, because I think a lot of times they feel like they get boxed into like a label and they feel like, okay, it's all or nothing. If they don't call themselves a vegan, then they can't do anything related to the lifestyle. I get that so much over the years. I've gotten that so much from people. They're like, well, I don't know if I want to do it, but I'll try this, but I don't know if I want to be a vegan. But my thing is, you haven't even given yourself the grace to even try anything. So if you just give people the opportunity, I feel like, to just say, I'm going to try some things, I feel like eventually they'll decide that this is something for them once they get their feet wet and see how this looks, and I feel like a lot of times people don't even give themselves that chance. And so that's why I always push, that's like my philosophy, I guess, progression over perfection, because this really, to me, is not a perfect lifestyle. I mean, it's a theory, right? We try to do what we can as best we can every single day, but it doesn't always come out perfect. And it honestly takes a long time to unlearn a lot of the ways that we've done things our whole lives. A lot of us don't decide to do this until we're 30, 40, 50 years old. That's a lot of unlearning that we have to do. So just giving people the opportunity to learn and kind of fail forward, I think, is important. Like, just do what you have to do and what you can right now and just build on that momentum. Don't feel like you have to do everything overnight. So that's why I like to push that. Yeah.
I think you're absolutely right. And I think it ties in really well to like the reducitarian approach, this idea that like, we don't all have to be vegan. We don't all have to be like this perfect picture
Yes.
of veganism. There's just changing one meal or changing one ingredient that you've been using or changing your attitude towards something that you're learning about. Like one of the things that I love about you and your mission is you embody like an intersection of different beliefs. So that and you're talking about the environment, about your health, about human and animal rights. Could you explain a little bit about those areas that you touch on and why, like how and why they intersect for you in particular?
Yeah, well, initially when I decided to become a vegan, first of all, I never thought I would be one. I just never thought that. And that's why I always give people permission to at least try. You just never know where it's going to end up being.
Can I
But
just
when I
interject?
decided,
Like, why did you think you would never why did you think you would never be vegan?
because when I tried it before for like 2 weeks, I was like, what am I going to eat? I was literally hungry. I had been a vegetarian prior for 2 years. And, before I was a vegetarian, I tried to be a vegan for 2 weeks and I felt like I was traumatized. I read a book and to me, how that goes, right? Everything was to me toxic. Everything was scary. And I was like, what am I going to do? And I literally survived off of apples and sunflower seeds for like 2 weeks because I was just like, I have no idea how to put meals together. I don't know how to make this sustainable. I don't know if this is a lifestyle. It's one thing to kind of do like a week, but to make it a lifestyle is a whole another situation. So I just never thought I would be one. And it wasn't until I read a book called Sistah Vegan in 2010. At that time, I read a book about veganism from Black people. Like I had never even thought about Black people being vegan. That's another reason why I didn't think that this was something that I would be able to do, because I was just like, do Black people even go vegan? Like, what is that, what does that even look like, you know? And so seeing that representation really made a huge difference for me, seeing other people doing it, because it was basically a book with a collection of stories from Black American women being vegan. And I was just like, wow, this is so cool. And then at that point, I decided that it was something for me. But up until that moment, I really didn't think that this would be a lifestyle for me, because what would I eat? You know, how can I enjoy? I love to eat. I enjoy eating with other people, and like, how is that going to work? So I just didn't see myself in it until that representation was there, which is actually why I started my own brand, because I wanted to be able to show, okay, we can do this and you don't lose who you are. Because I know a lot of times that's a barrier for people too. They're like, I'm gonna lose who I am. Like, it's not gonna be fun. So yeah, that's why I didn't think I would.
That's
I
interesting.
don't even remember your initial question.
I totally yeah, changed it. But you know, those 2 weeks that you were vegan, like what prompted you to kind of to go on that journey initially?
Yeah, so I read, do you remember Skinny Bitch?
Yes, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So I read, it was what, 2008? I read Skinny Bitch. And at that time, I did not realize that it was a book about veganism. I thought it was a diet book. And I saw, like, I think it was Victoria Beckham and like a paparazzi picture. She had it. And I was like, what is that? That sounds interesting. And I went to I went to the bookstore, picked it up, and I went home. I'm like, oh, just read this book, lose a little bit of weight. And I was traumatized at the end of that. I was like, what? No, granted, I already knew what a vegan was because I actually grew up near PETA. So I knew what vegans were, but I just never saw it for myself. So yeah.
Okay, so yeah, my original question, sorry, was about these, like about how environmental and human and animal and your own health, how all of these aspects come together for you, and why it's important to you to even talk about those intersections and overlapping areas.
Yeah, because I think that that's what it looks like for most of us anyway when we start this. We may start for one reason, and then we learn about other parts of this lifestyle, and then we just kind of build on that. So for me, it was initially about animal cruelty and factory farming. I just really was just like, it was in a way like a silent protest against that, because I just didn't realize how brutal the industry was as far as like meat production, animal byproducts. I didn't know. It's like kind of like what you don't know, you don't know, you know? And then it's kind of like one of those things where you realize why we never see factory farms. Like, you know how you can just go to or pick apples and berries and it's like out in the open. Well, there's definitely a reason why we don't see animals being brutalized, because we would never participate in it if we knew. So it's kind of like one of those things. And then as I continue with my journey, I started thinking about the environmental things, because at the time, you know, when I decided to become vegan, remember like they were so much emphasis about gas guzzling vehicles, like big trucks and things like that, the big Hummer back in the day that people used to have. And I was just like, no, there's actually a lot more that we can be doing that is actually more beneficial than just worrying about our cars. You know, there's like, we can really be mindful about the food that we eat. And then of course, I started to learn more about the human implications of not being vegan. You know, we can probably literally feed the world if we did not raise animals for food, because we would have those resources for other people. And also people who work in these industries, you know, and how they're treated awful, you know. So that was a way. And then of course the health. As I got older, I decided to become a vegan when I was about, I think I was like 28. And I didn't really care about the health as much. But now that I'm older, I'm like, I think I need to be more mindful about making sure that I eat. So I think it's just a natural evolution when you decide to become a vegan, especially when you've been one for a while. You start to kind of build on everything that you're learning. So that's how it looks for me. I don't know if that's answering your question, but yeah.
Yeah, it's like kind of when you take the blinkers off, it's suddenly like, oh, actually the industrial animal agriculture underpins so much wrong in this world, like from humans, animals, the environment, like you say. I'm interested in what sparked your understanding of the impact of animal agriculture on the environment, because you're talking quite a while ago. You made that, you were aware of that. And I feel like it only seems to be recent in the last maybe couple of years, and especially
really?
since, well, yeah, like I feel like it hasn't hit like media, like strong media narratives until like, you know, like literally just in these last couple of years, I feel like people are more aware of that connection in the mainstream. So what was it that kind of like got you into it at such an early, you know, you're like an early adopter of the idea?
I think it was just probably just being a part of the community, you know, just reading and just, you know, blogs and books and watching documentaries. I didn't even think about the fact, but it actually makes sense what you're saying. And sometimes, you know, how when you're immersed in something, you don't really think about it. But yeah, you're right, because I think because people during lockdown, we weren't using the roads and we weren't messing up the planet as much because we couldn't. People were able to see, wow, my decisions do affect how other people are, you know, how it does affect other people and the planet. So wow, I guess just I never even thought about it, but I'm thinking because of just reading books and just being a part of the community, I'm just coming across different articles and things like that. So yeah.
That's really cool. Yeah.
What
I
about
mean,
for you? Like, did you always feel like it has, you said you feel like in recent years, but what has your experience been like with that?
well, I feel like so for me personally, I wanted to go vegan when I was or vegetarian when I was much younger, like when I was a little kid, because of the animal question. So all I thought about was, you know, like you were talking about, you know, there's factory farms and animal rights and how can we be doing this? So as a kid, if you're able to, and if your parents, you know, or your carers support you, then, you know, I was lucky that I was in that situation, and it stayed with me obviously ever since.
Perfect. Yeah.
But I feel like I joined Sentient Media in January 2020 as the executive director. So I was an advisor before, but I took that role in January 2020. And looking at the media, like our mission is to increase the media output, to change the narratives and start having more conversations about, you know, the environmental impact of industrial animal agriculture and all of these other intersections and overlapping areas that, you know, that you embody and that some, you know, other people that we've had on the podcast do as well. But I feel that over these last couple of years, the media output has increased in the sense of people actually making that connection with the environment and animals. And again, it's that like question of that bubble that you're in, right? So it's like, is this actually happening, or is it just that I'm now like really deep in this space that every article that comes out I'm like, oh my gosh, there's another one. You know, so I anecdotally speaking, of course, but yeah, hopefully at Sentient Media we're going to be doing more kind of in-depth, more rigorous data-led research into that, and to see if there actually has been an uptick in our kind of coverage and mainstream media output of this kind of content. But yeah, so you were definitely, well, I think you were definitely ahead of the curve there. So that's really cool.
Yeah.
So it sounds like you've kind of always been, you know, curious and interested, and you've not been, would it be fair to say you haven't kind of shut your eyes or kind of pushed away, like, you know, new bits of information or new ideas and ways to live that are more kind of environmentally and human and animal friendly? Do you feel like you're like an open person to that kind of thing?
I think so. Yeah, I think so.
As far as I understand it, you didn't have a direct calling as a child or as a young person. You weren't like, you know, oh, I want to be, you know, whatever it is. Like, yeah, correct me if I'm wrong, like, did you have an idea of what you wanted to do professionally, and like what was it that sparked you to go down this road?
No, you know, it's growing up, I wanted to work in forensics. I always wanted to do that. But then then I started getting into the sciences more, and I was like, I don't really know. I'm not that strong in math. I don't know. But I was always intrigued by that. And then as far as the calling into the veganism, I didn't really think that this would be a career for me until I started to blog about it. Because I just said, oh my gosh, I have to teach people how to do this. I have to show people what this looks like, because I was having so much fun as I was learning. And I was just like documenting on my website, like, okay, we're eating this as a family today. Okay, no one like this. We're not doing that for a little while. You know, it was so fun learning it. And then one day I went out to lunch with my cousin, and she was like, you need to get on YouTube so you can really show people. And I was like, I don't know about that. I don't know if I want to do that. And so that's how things changed for me. I just became like so passionate about it. And it was just so fun. I was just having a lot of fun. And I was like, wow, I can make money and just talk and share. This is amazing. So that's how it looked for me. That's how it looked for me. I didn't really think that this would be like a career initially.
That's really interesting. And I think that that's really nice. I think when people are creative or people are, really passionate about something and you just allow it to happen, that can really produce something really, really high quality and really actually beneficial that people actually want, right? I think that's what
Yeah.
you've managed to create. And something that we've touched on, like this idea of like media narratives and stories in the press. I think you have been so successful in getting your image, your brand, your identity, and your voice out there. And it's something, of course, we're obsessed with at Sentient Media. But I've got you down in the New York Times, your appearance on Good Morning Washington, which was so wonderful to see. I was just like curious, looking at this stuff that's out there about you, like, do these things just kind of land in your lap, or was it like a lot of work to get these interviews and to get that press coverage?
Anna, like it definitely just landed in my lap. It's one of those things. So I don't know if you know this, but I was very, very consistent for a long time. And then I took like I would say like a 3-year break. And I'm actually just coming back. I feel like this year, like I've been very like consistent being back this year. And at the time when I was getting all of those opportunities, I didn't even really, I think, realize that it was happening. So it definitely just fell in my lap. I think my timing was really good too. Like I was out when a lot of people weren't necessarily as vocal. It was before Instagram became what it is. It's before YouTube became what it is now. So I think that it was just a timing thing. A lot of it was. And sometimes people be like, oh, you're like one of the OGs in this. You've been doing this for so long, kind of thing. And that's true. So I think it was just like, I don't even think I like completely grasped the opportunities that I was given, because it just happened. And I'm like, how did they find me, kind of thing, So I don't feel like I necessarily worked hard for it. Maybe I didn't, just didn't realize it, but I honestly think it was a timing thing.
Well,
It was really timing. Yeah.
I mean, that's really lucky, but you were definitely putting the work in, because you were creating, the content, you were creating the community, and you were, putting stuff out there. So I feel like, you probably did more work than you're giving yourself credit for there.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah.
But thinking about this, if you were like, the OG of like, vegan, recipes and going out there and doing this kind of thing, like, have you noticed over that time a difference in the representation of vegans or the representation of veganism in the media?
Absolutely. Oh my goodness. Like these days I can say, oh, I'm a vegan, and no one like questions what that is. Because of course, you've been doing this for a long time. There was a time where, you would not go in a restaurant and say you're vegan. You go in and say, please, no eggs, no cheese. You have to be very specific, because people didn't know what that meant. And now I feel like it's, oh my gosh, everybody in some way knows someone in some way who has at least tried to do this, for themselves. And so it's absolutely different, so different. And it's a good thing. It's an amazing thing, because people know that there's a different way of life if they want it. So it's definitely more mainstream. I think, it's not, I don't even know what the numbers look like. You may have more information on that, but this was forever ago when I checked it was only like what, 2 or 3% of Americans identify as vegan. Is it still that same, or is it higher now?
As far as I know, it's pretty static. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's definitely a shift in a good way.
Yeah, I feel like the people who like identify as vegan is different from the numbers of people who are reducing and who are actively having, the vegan alternatives that are available now everywhere. So whilst the percentage might not fully change or, change as much as we want, I think that actually I think we'd need to look at the data, but my feeling is that more people, particularly here in the UK, more people are trying, the vegan options. There definitely been an uptick in that kind of, in the supermarket, like over COVID, the supermarket's just completely changed. Now, like, what used to be a tiny little section is now, an entire aisle in a supermarket. So, and that's been across several different, big chains here. So there must have been an uptick in at least people trying stuff.
Absolutely. Like I don't like that's a very good point, because I think that most people just don't identify as far as, like you said, that 2 or 3%, but they're definitely trying the alternatives, especially when it comes to like the plant-based milks and like the margarine and things like that. So I can, even when I'm in the store, I can see in people's cart, they may have some ground beef in their cart, but they also will have some Gardein in there. They'll have some milk. So they're trying different things, which is amazing. And that's my approach too. Like every time I do something, I'm thinking to myself, how can I make this as easy as possible for people so they don't question it? Every piece of content I create, I think of that. What can I do to tell them where to find it, how to make it, how to make this accessible as possible, practical as possible. It doesn't feel like they're changing everything, but at least they're willing to try something. And so that's how I approach everything that I do. So yeah, you're absolutely right. They're not necessarily vegan, but they're trying some of the products, which is amazing.
Exactly. Yeah, we just had a vegan barbecue this weekend.
What?
Yeah, it's just been warm here in the UK for like the
Yes.
first time. So we had a vegan barbecue with a couple of meat eaters there, and I was like, let's just make it fun. So I just bought like all of the different types of burgers, all the different vegan burgers, and just cooked them all up. And then we did like a ranking challenge, and the winner was Beyond Burger for these people.
Oh,
Have you
love
tried
it.
Beyond Burger
I
before?
have. I actually just had Beyond from a restaurant because I hadn't had it in a while. My go-to lately has been like the Gardein. I don't know which it is, the Gardein
I don't
Ultimate
know.
Burger.
I don't know. I don't. I was going to ask what is Gardein. I was like, oh, is it something? Does
Yeah,
it
yeah,
have here
yeah.
maybe?
It must not be in the UK, but
Yeah.
Gardein is a really popular one in America,
Mm.
and their Ultimate Burger, I like that one. But I was actually had it at a restaurant, Beyond. I've had Beyond before, but that was the first time I had it in a while, and it was really good. I feel like restaurants are getting better with training people how to cook it, because the
Mm.
very first time I had it, it was so dried out, and I was like, I feel like they're in there treating this like beef. This is why this isn't working. So when I had it, it was like I was able to. They didn't have vegan cheese, which was disappointing, but I put some avocado on there,
Nice.
and it was really good. So yeah, I love it. I love it. I like to try all of the new stuff. It's the fun
Yeah,
stuff.
I like it too, but there's almost too much now. It's like it used to be just really easy to just kind of, oh, you're not eating junk food because there isn't anything you can eat. And now it's everywhere. It's like, oh yeah, I should buy the vegan thing to support, them stocking this. And then you're like, oh my gosh, I can't eat another vegan junk food
I
meal.
know.
But
It's so like I feel like I'm in that phase. Well, coming out of that phase, because over COVID, I've gained so much weight just eating all of the things. And now I'm like, okay, I'm just trying to get more active, and I need to be eating more fresh foods and things like that. And so that's what my focus has been lately. But you're absolutely right. It's so easy to just get caught up in all of the fun junk food and just
mm,
stay there.
yeah,
Just
right.
eat that stuff all the day.
I mean, if we're on the junk food conversation, like how do you, I mean, or maybe this is something you've been learning recently or relearning, like how do you balance the desire for junk food, but also the desire to eat healthy vegan food?
Yeah, I'm just like, yeah, like you said, I'm getting back into that. After the last couple of years of, especially when we were like really locked down, I just ate like everything because it was just something fun to do, watch movies and eat food. I don't know. But um I think that I definitely have always been the type of person that think there's a place for that. Some of the fun junk foods, because I think a lot of times people, one of the reasons they're not interested in being vegan is because they assume that all we have is salads and smoothies. And we know that that is far from the truth. If anything, I eat way more variety than I did when I was eating a standard American diet. And so I don't know, like the balance of the way that I would recommend someone do it is planning out your meals is really helpful, and like batch cooking. You don't have to necessarily like meal prep, but like batch cooking, because I think a lot of times, at least for me, I fall into a lot of the vegan junk food type of options when I don't have a plan. And I just kind of go in the store and just grab something to make it really quick. And just kind of cooking your food ahead of time. Like I make this chickpea stew that I love so much, and it's so fast and it's easy and it's inexpensive and it's delicious, and there's so many different ways that you can kind of put that together with spices and vegetables, and it's perfect. Like I could eat that for lunch like every day. So just having a plan is so key, I believe, if you want to have more making sure that you're eating well, is you have to have a plan. It's not like when you eat a standard American diet and you're eating out of convenience. You can't do that as a vegan. you definitely have to have some, it doesn't have the perfect plan, but it has to be some idea of what you're going to eat in order to make sure that you're getting everything that you need.
Well, right. And on the standard, American diet as well, you're not getting everything you need. You're deficient in fiber, like all of these
Iron,
yeah,
everything.
exactly. I mean, do you find that your life is now, like when it comes to cooking and things, do you find that your life is simpler, or do you actually think it's more complicated now that you actually, because you're not just vegan, because you could just be a convenience food vegan nowadays, like you could do that, in America and in the UK.
Oh yeah.
But do you think that now you're thinking about what you're eating, you're thinking about, nutrients, etc., do you think it's more complicated?
Not really. I think because fortunately I have the advantage of time, been doing this for a long time. So not really. I think these days, the thing that I'm focusing on is how can I make it more interesting is what I've been thinking about, because it's been so long and you kind of have how it is. You just have your go-tos and it just makes life easy. And so because I'm back on YouTube and I'm just posting more on there and I'm trying to work on content for Instagram, I have been thinking more about okay, what are some things that I can veganize? What are some things that will really help people? And so I have been trying to make things a little more fun and things like that. But overall, in my day-to-day life, no,
Yeah.
just have my go-tos and I just keep it there.
Yeah, right. I mean, what about your kids? You have 3 kids, right?
I do,
Yeah.
yeah.
What was that? I mean, from what I understand, you were not vegan when you had them, and then you transitioned. So yeah, could you explain a little bit about, what happened and how, how your kids eat?
Yeah, so my oldest son was 8 years old. So, that was interesting. That was interesting because he had already was used to McDonald's and, well, we didn't really eat McDonald's, but, fast food and just things like that, Chick-fil-A and everything. I don't know. You guys don't have Chick-fil-A in the UK, probably.
Maybe.
Probably not.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, I know. So he was used to those type of places. And so my youngest son was about 4. So he was actually the easiest one because, he was 4, they had vegan versions of chicken nuggets and corn dogs and that type of fun stuff. So he was still able to eat that. They love lasagna. So I just veganized that, spaghetti, anything they wanted. It was very important to me to figure out a vegan version that they approved of. And then once I figured that out, and I think that was probably the hardest part, because, it's like a process. Everything is not going to taste exactly the same, because if it did, everybody would already be doing it, right? So it's like this trial and error thing. And so just testing out things and figuring out what they wanted to eat, that was a process. But they never have actually my oldest son. No, that's not true, because my oldest son, he kind of goes back and forth. He'll be vegan for 6 months. And then he'll start eating something like cheeseburgers and stuff. And then he'll be vegan again. So for me, when my kids were younger, to me, it was all about setting the foundation for them, letting them know that this was an option. That's what it looked like for that. So they would, when they were with me, they ate vegan. But if they went to my mom's or somewhere else, I didn't give them a hard time about that. Because I used to think to myself, adults can't even make these decisions. Why would I give kids that type of pressure? It's not right. It's not fair.
Yeah.
So
Right.
they knew what to eat, but if it wasn't available, I didn't want them to not have anything to eat. That just, to me, it was just silly. I wasn't going to do that. And also I didn't want them to have a hang-ups about food too. I didn't want them to have, because that's another thing that I feel like there's not enough conversation about. It's kind of well, you should just starve if there's nothing for you. It's that's not realistic in the long run, So for me, they were vegan at home, but when they went elsewhere, they weren't. So that's how it looked when they were younger. Like I said, my younger 2 kids, they are very vegan friendly, of course, because that's how they grew up. And my oldest, he'll go back and forth. He's 20, so he'll go back and forth.
Yeah, I mean, that's really good. And I think that's really important what you said about having hang-ups about it. So I think that is so dangerous if you are, with friends or family or with your children or whatever, if you're making people anxious about food. Like that's yeah, and I think that's a tricky line for a lot of people to walk. Like I know when I was a kid, and I was like very adamant about everybody being, you know, back then I was adamant about everybody being vegetarian because I wasn't really like I wasn't aware of the vegan stuff. So I was like, I would shout at my mum and dad, like, you know, every time they had, you know, chicken or duck or whatever it was, I'd be like, how dare you? It's like that's not, you know, it didn't work.
No, it doesn't. But you know what? I think that's normal too, because I used to kind of feel like that with my parents too. But then I noticed that when I calmed down and I was like coming from a place of love, when I would go to their house, they would have vegan options in the fridge. Like they would try different things. And then this is, I don't know if you guys have it in UK, but field roast, my parents love their sausage. So anytime I visit, they want me to bring that to them. So they would make that. So they're eating that instead of pork in the morning. And it's just like that type of coming from that place of love and understanding and education. It's a game changer, you know, hounding people. No one's listening to that. We all shut down. We're not listening to that.
Yeah, I mean, especially I think when it comes to food, like, I mean, when it comes to politics and other things as well, but when it comes to food, like that just seems like such a like integral part of like, I mean, it's your identity, it's who you are. Like, you know, if your grandma made you this pie or whatever, that's how you identify and that's what you want to continue to eat and that's what you want to pass down. You know, it's part of yeah, it's part of everything. It's your, you know, it's your lifeline, isn't it?
Identity. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
I mean, we've touched on this and you touched on this earlier, but thinking of this idea of identity, I've heard you say that you started your podcast to have candid conversations with other vegans, but especially with other Black vegans, to inspire the veganism in the Black community and to show that there are Black vegans, like you said.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, could you tell me about how you've seen veganism in the Black community change over the last, you know, 12 or so or more years?
Oh, wow. It's been a huge shift in a great way. And I think a lot of it has to do with social media. You know, Instagram was not around when I started. Twitter was not, I think Twitter was probably, I wasn't sharing anything on Facebook. Facebook was around, but it wasn't like the way it looks now where you can kind of have a business on Facebook. It was just like friends and family, truly, back then. Wow. So the thing about it is now it's like one of those things in retrospect, there were probably a lot of Black vegans back then, but because of the way things were, I just didn't see them. And I just happened to put myself out there. So that's why I would probably connect with them more so than anyone else, because people would read my blog and then they would email me and things like that. But the shift has just like been incredible because and I talk to people all the time for my podcast, and there's so many Black vegans now, which is amazing because like I said, that helped me transition. And that was why I started my podcast. It was so important to have these open conversations with other Black vegans, because I wanted to be able to show people that this is not only something you can do, but you can do it long-term if that's your desire. Because sometimes we have to see ourselves in things. A lot of times we have to see ourselves in things in order for it to resonate. So yeah, definitely a shift in a great way. But I also have to say that I feel like, I don't know if it's still like this because I try to avoid this type of dialogue online, but I noticed that there was a time where it would be like, it's like a hierarchy of veganism. I don't know. I know that you're probably see a lot more than I do, but you know, people would try to divide vegans, like junk food vegan, health vegan, and you're not vegan enough. And you did it. There was a time where I felt like it was really ugly in the community. Hopefully it's better now. Like I said, I try to avoid that type of thing. So I don't know if that's still an issue, but I do remember that. I remember there was a time. Do you remember some of this?
Yeah, and I do think it still goes on.
It still does, yeah.
Yeah, like I think that there are some, I do think it must be a minority of people who hold on to certain beliefs and certain ways of doing things, and that they, you know, that's how they view veganism. And if you don't follow that exact structure, and it's not just what you eat, you know, it's how you behave. It's if you get a, you know, if you get a puppy, or if you don't adopt, or if you ride horses, like, you know, all of these things that kind of encompass into veganism at different degrees. Yeah, and I'm with you on the kind of, look, this isn't really a useful conversation. I feel like the much more important conversation is the one, you know, that you've been touching on and that you touch on with a lot of your guests on your podcast, this idea of like, you know, what are we doing? Like, what is this interesting meal? Like, how are we reducing? How are we changing? How are we becoming more aware of things versus, you know, being vegan or vegan enough? Yeah, it's an uncomfortable space, and
Yeah, it's not productive at all, in my opinion. And it makes me a little sad when people who aren't vegan come across that type of content, opposed to coming across someone maybe like me, because I'm like, man, if that's their first stop, then they may not actually do it, or they're going to be so hard on themselves that it's not going to be, because there was a time for me, it's very easy to go down a rabbit hole with this, very much so. And you just never feel like you're doing enough and it's not good enough. So why even try? So it just makes me conscious about making sure that people who come to me, it'll always be some grace there for them. Like, this is what you can do. But if it doesn't look exactly like this, these are some baby steps that you can take, you know, to get to that point. So
and
that's
you
how I
do,
look at it.
yeah, and you do an amazing job at that, and it comes across like immediately interacting with your stuff on YouTube or listening to your podcast. Like that approach, it's so, I mean, I want to say refreshing. Like, you know, there are other people who have this approach, of course, but like I feel that the way that you do things, it is really refreshing, and it's really it's like comforting, you know. It's like, this is a nice space where like you feel welcome, and where, you know, you want to be. Like, this is the kind of community that you want to be a part of. I mean, thinking about communities and building communities and looking for, you know, those kind of warning signs or those red flags about certain communities that are out there, like, do you have any advice for people who want to join, you know, a supportive space? Like, how would you kind of establish which community you would want to join or be a part of?
And you're talking specifically about online, right? Online spaces.
Yeah, I guess so. But if you want to say in person as well, but yeah.
Yeah, because I think I know in my early days, it was very beneficial for me to meet other vegans in person. And so I used to use sites like Meetup, and we would literally be a bunch of strangers will go to a restaurant, and we would share a same interest. Usually it was vegetarian or vegan, and we would just share a meal together, and we would talk. And I'm telling you, no one knew each other, and it would be so fun. So that was really helpful for me. And I know that, in my opinion, I haven't been on there in a while, but I know there was a time that I felt like Facebook groups weren't necessarily the nicest. Hopefully things are better now. I don't know. I have a feeling they're not. But I will say that I don't necessarily recommend those groups, but maybe finding pages that you enjoy on Instagram and on YouTube, subscribing to those pages, and like interacting in the comments with those people, like reading what they're saying and connecting with the person who has that page. That's the only thing I can think of. I'm sure there's other things. Do you have any suggestions with that? Because I really don't.
No, that's why I'm asking you. No. You know, I also kind of agree with you about the Facebook thing. Like, I personally, you know, I've been chucked out of Facebook groups for, you know, not being vegan enough or whatever in the past. And, you know, I find it, a complex space that perhaps it's not the best forum, right? It's not the best forum for these kind of discussions. I mean, this is one of the reasons we built the Writers Collective, which you kindly, you know, came on and shared your tips on building a successful podcast. But, you know, building a space that's outside of those social media environments, where it does kind of promote, well, it doesn't, let's say, like, allow space for more complicated and complex conversations. I feel that looking for a community, you know, that's on Mighty Networks that we host the Writers Collective, and that might be a fun space to look for communities to join. But I remember meetup.com. I haven't thought about that for years.
Yes, I know. I haven't done anything on there in a long time, but that was so helpful in those early days because I knew no one. And I just love that so much. I'm sure they're still as good as they were back then. Another thing too is people always tell me that they feel like my podcast is a community. And I love that because I really don't. It's funny because I guess because I'm in it. I'm like, how is it a community? And there's not any like back and forth, I feel like, enough. But people say they do feel connected because I introduced them to so many people that they probably would have never known. So it always makes me wonder if I should try to do like events and things like that for listeners and previous guests, and we kind of like connect in that way. And that would be a great way to like do things in person. I would love that. I just really have no idea how to do it, but I think that would be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I think you should absolutely do that. I know, that our Hen House podcast, they have,
Oh
yeah, they have their flock, so for those, very dedicated members of the community, they do, I think it's monthly, sessions with the hosts, and, sometimes they'll bring a guest in as well. And it's just the community gets a chance to kind of chat and meet each other. But I think, yeah, you should absolutely do that. That would be awesome to see. And let me know when you do, because I'd love to,
yes.
love to have a look at
I
that.
would love it. But I want to do it in person. Like we have a meal and we have music and we just I don't know. That's probably some years off, but that would be great.
Oh, that just
But yeah,
sounds
I love that too.
wonderful.
The flock. I love how they call it the flock.
Mm.
They're loyalist.
Yeah, exactly. But I just to your point of you didn't feel like you had a community, like you absolutely did. I mean, that's why I was like because you're like the creator of this safe space by your persona and by the by the guests that you have on, and by I feel that you've created a really wonderful space for people, for everyone, like long, OG vegans like you, but also, for
The
new
babies. Yeah.
for babies, people who are trying things
Big
out.
and curious. Yeah.
I mean, speaking of this and all of the work that you've put in, and obviously you've got kids as well, like you have such a busy life. And I was wondering if over the years you've established any routines or any practices that help you, recuperate, or give you the energy that you need to be able to, produce all of this amazing stuff.
Oh wow. Yeah. I think that starting to build this team that I'm working on has been game changer. I was literally doing all of this stuff myself like an idiot. Like, what was I thinking? I really was. It was just because it wasn't even because I was afraid to pass things on to other people. Because I know sometimes people have that struggle. That wasn't it. I just had no idea where to look for help, you know? And so the beauty is this podcast has actually helped me connect with so many other vegan business owners. And then they'll suggest things to me, or they'll offer me their own team and their own resources. And it has helped tremendously having that type of help. So having the team this year has been incredible as far as like buying some of my time back. And I have also been very intentional lately about taking days off and to do nothing but like watch true crime and lay in my bed. And that is it. I've been very, very intentional about that. I love going on walks. I love that so much. It feels so amazing. Even if it's 15 minutes, it just feels like it resets my day. What else? I love making juice. That's like so therapeutic and fun to me. I don't know why. I got this Nama J2 juicer. I love that thing. It's a cold pressed juicer. And I always want to share with people like, oh, I got some juice for you. You should come over and get some juice. I'm going to bring it to you. That's been like really fun for me. I just started doing that like a month and a half ago, and it's amazing. So those are like the little things that I've done. I mean, I know that's not like huge, but for me it is, because I used to just be so in my mind and I was never able to relax. And now I just love having and reinvesting back into the business, because I think a lot of my issues before it was that I would burn out like so easily, because I was literally blogging, podcasts, social media, YouTube. Like, why was I trying to do all of that as one person and then thought that I would be able to sustain that? It's just like, what were you thinking? So these days, just having that support has been incredible for me, so that I can actually do nothing if I didn't want to. So I love it. I mean, I have to do, you know what I mean? I'm like the face of my brand, so I have to do stuff, but like the tedious things behind the scenes that someone else can do better and faster, why not let them do that?
Yeah, right. Like getting experts in those, like in the production and in all those other things that can take, somebody like you or I like a long time, whereas they're like, no, here are all the quick shortcuts and blah, blah, blah. So
exactly. Yeah.
I hear you. And I guess on that note, like the self you know, the kind of how you recuperate. Do you have like a favorite food? I mean, well, apart from the juices, do you have like a favorite food or a favorite meal that you go to?
Yeah, I love rice. I don't know why. It doesn't matter how it is, like dirty rice, fried rice, plain rice, jasmine. I love rice. I love jasmine rice. Um, so yeah, rice with everything if I can. uh what else? I have been maybe because it's warmer right now, but I just been loving salads lately with just like black beans and like spicy bitchin sauce, chipotle bitchin sauce, uh lots of lettuce. Like I love it because I can coat it with all of my dressing. I love lots of lettuce in there, tomato, cucumber, some walnuts. I've been doing a little bit of like this roasted walnuts and cranberry thing that I've been eating within my salad. I just been loving that. I don't know. I think it's just the time of year. And I'm like I said, I'm really trying to get better at like dropping some of this weight. Because that's another thing. People think that we're skinny and we're like, we can be, but we can also not be. And and that's okay too.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Like vegans come in all, you know, shapes and sizes and different ways of eating and different approaches. Yeah, absolutely. And I guess like it would be good to hear what you're working on, like what's coming up this year for you, if you're just kind of getting back into it. Like, have you got any big plans? What should we watch out for?
Yeah. So fortunately, the podcast, all my episodes are ready for the rest of the year. Like I know is a game changer because so now I'm working on getting back on YouTube and it's wild because I feel like I don't know YouTube anymore. It's so different from when I used to be consistent on there. So I wanted to be able, so the podcast was important for me to get as much of that done as I could so that I can focus on at least the interview part. I wanted to get all of that out the way so that I can focus on YouTube. And so that's the goal, is just getting consistent on there. And I was working on like my pillars of content the other day where I just want to do more like what we ate today kind of videos and just of course easy simple recipes. And also I wanted to sit down and do like tip videos too to show people like, okay, this is how you can put a meal together, you know, inspire people in that way. And yeah, so that's what I'm looking forward to. Also finally working on a podcast course, like the A through Z of what I do to produce my show and how to help other people start there. So those are the projects that I'm working on right now, getting consistent on YouTube again and the podcast course. So yeah, those are the things I'm working on.
That's so cool. That's very exciting to hear. And as soon as that course is available, I know that everybody who attended the session you did in our Writers Collective will be excited, and those who watched it afterwards will definitely, we'll be excited to see that come out.
Yes,
that's awesome.
you.
Is that something you're planning to get out this year or next year?
Yes. So we started working on it last week, and that's a beauty of having like a team now, like because I can just actually focus on the work and not worry about the tech and all the other moving parts that actually slows me down. Because once I get my mind into all of those things, I don't know if I'm going to do all this. But so basically I've been working on an outline. I started doing that last week, and then I'm going to start recording, and then my assistant's going to help me with like the slides and everything like that for each of the sessions or the segments. So that'll be good.
Amazing. Oh, I can't wait to see that. I'll take some tips.
Yeah, you're amazing though. This is so fun. I love it. I love it.
Yeah, well, it's really fun to be able to speak to you about everything that you've been doing. And I wonder, is there anyone out there who you follow, who you would recommend people engage with and check out their work?
Oh, that's a good one. Wow. Destiny, I love her. She is amazing. Like she not only has all this incredible, like affordable vegan grocery hauls that she does in cooking, but she also has a tiny house, which I think that is incredible. So having Destiny, for people who don't know, Eat Your Destiny or Let's Go Tiny, that's her Instagram, both of the Instagram pages. I like Todd Anderson. He's Turn Up Vegan on Instagram. He's a lot of fun. I love to see Black men who are vegans. And he's I interviewed him on my podcast like 2 weeks ago. He'll be out later this year, but he was just so cool and so down to earth. And I just love that about him. Gosh, there's so many people. Oh my gosh.
But that's a great, sorry, go on.
And I was gonna say it's plant-based Tamika. She's out of Chicago. She goes to like all of the restaurants in Chicago, vegan ones and just like show people how to eat vegan at these restaurants. And her videos are like so beautiful, and everything she eats, I want to eat too, kind of thing. So she's fun. I love that. There's so many people, because the beauty is I meet so many people because of my podcast. I love that so much. Like I always make a joke that if I have to travel for work anywhere, I'll always be able to have lunch with somebody in every state because of this show. And I'm just so thankful for that.
And in the UK, thank you very much.
Yes, now. Hey! I love it. Yes, yes.
We're a tiny island, so it doesn't take long to get around. I'll be able to find you. Amazing. That's really cool and really nice to hear about those people. I'll make sure I get all of the links in the show notes as well. And of course yours and Destiny, our community engagement manager, doing an amazing job in our writers collective. So yeah, I'm glad that you brought her up. Her tiny house is so cool.
So spacious, right?
I couldn't believe it, because I've seen her pictures, of it, and obviously I've seen the pictures online, but actually seeing the video that went out, like I was like, oh wow, you actually like pan up and you can, you've got like a whole
like
house.
a loft, and then like a living room and all the storage space. I'm like, this is incredible. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, really cool, really cool. No, awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time, Monique. It's been wonderful to get a little snapshot into what you do and why you do it. So thank you
so much, Anna, for having me. I appreciate it.